We are on Daf Chaf Gimel Amud Aleph. If you're following in the art scroll, we are on page 23A2. Okay, now the next bit is going to be the comments that were made about Choni HaMe'agal and his method of prayer and the efficacy of those prayers. Tanu Rabbanan, Ma shalchu b'nei Lishkat HaGazit, the Choni HaMe'agal. The members of the Lishkat HaGazit. Lishkat HaGazit is the room that was carved out of stone. That was the famous room of the Sanhedrin that was adjacent to the Beit HaMikdash. So what did they say about him? What did they quote on him? Vatigzar Omer vayakom lach ve'al de'achecha no ga'or. Vatigzar Omer, says the Gemara, you will make a gezerah and you will state it. Vayakom lecha, and that will become true. Ve'al de'achecha, and on your way, no ga'or, a light will shine on the way that you lay out. So on this specific pasuk, how did they explain it to be relating to Choni? Vatigzor Omer, ata gazarta milmata, you made a decree down here on earth. HaKadosh Baruch Hu fulfills your decree with regards to the rain up in the heavens. And on your way, this light will shine. Dor shaya afel, a generation that was completely darkened. You brought tremendous light with your tefillah. So they quoted this pasuk about Choni HaMe'agal, and that's how they related to him. The Gemara then continues to say, what else did they quote? What other pasukim did they quote with regards to Choni as an expression of what he had done? Ki yishpilu vatomer geva. When ki yishpilu means when they were made low. Vatomer, and you said geva, which means from the lashon ge'e or ga'ava, which means to raise up. Dor shaya shafel, a generation ki yishpilu that had lowered itself. Higbahato, you raised it betfilatecha, through your tefillot. V'sach enaim, and a person whose eyes were on the ground, Yoshia, you brought salvation to. Dor shesach ba'avono, a generation that through its sins had lowered itself. Hosha'ato betfilatecha, you saved it with your tefillah. Yimalet inaki, a person who is not clean will be saved. Dor she'alo haya naki milatato betfilatecha, a generation that was not clean, you saved it with your tefillot. V'nimlat bebor kapecha, and they what allowed them to be saved? What about you allowed them to be saved? Bebor kapecha, the fact that on your hands were completely clean from any sort of something that was unjust or dishonest. Milatatov ma'aseh yadecha berurin. You saved them through your actions, which were so clean and so pure. Now, one of the interesting things is that each one of these levels of these pisukim are not describing different things: darkness to light, salvation, etc., lowered through sins. They actually refer to the hishtalshelut, to the story as it unfolds with Choni, where first they prayed and he got only a little bit. So he spoke and the heavens answered. Right? That's the first pasuk. And then what happened? Then they needed more, so he spoke again, but then it was a problem because it was too much, right? As we said earlier, right? So each stage represented the next part of the pisukim that they used, because then the people sinned by complaining on something that was good, and then in the end, Choni was able to then, even though he's not able to ask for berachah to go away, he was able to bring the par hoda'ah, and through that process get the rain to cease and recede, to cease from the heavens and to recede from the earth. The Gemara now tells us one of the most famous stories in Jewish lore. Amar B'Yochanan. B'Yochanan says, Kol yamav shel oto tzaddik, all the days of this tzaddik of Choni HaMe'agal, haya mitzta'er al mikra zeh. He was in pain. He was pained by a certain pasuk he didn't understand. Shir Ma'alot b'shuv Hashem et Shivat Zion, hayu kecholmim. The song of Shir Ma'alot, of rising up, when Hashem will redeem the Shivat Zion, the prisoners of Eretz Israel, hayinu kecholmim, we were like dreamers. So it uses the expression of kecholmim, like dreamers, about the time where God will return the captives of Yerushalayim back to where they came from. Now remember, when did Choni live? Choni lived in the aftermath of, of the space between the first and the second temples. So he was not in our Galut, but they had seen the Galut that had just passed. And they had been told about that Galut. How long would that Galut last? Between the first Beit HaMikdash and the second Beit HaMikdash, they were told that it would be 70 years. And then David HaMelech in Shir Ma'alot says, when Hashem is going to redeem the captives to Yerushalayim, that were kacholmim, like we were dreaming, like we were asleep for 70 years. Amar, Choni said to himself, Mi ika denaim shivim shinin bechelma. Could there be somebody that would sleep for 70 years and have dreams for so long? What does David HaMelech mean when he says hayinu kecholmim? We were like dreamers. If that time spanned a time span of 70 years, it doesn't sound like something which is possible, and it bothered him that he didn't understand this idea. Yom Achad, one day, Havazah Borcha is traveling on the road. Chaziyalahu Gavra, Tahavenat Tachruva. He saw a guy planting a tree, specifically a tree that grows carobs. Amale, he said, Hi ad kama shnin ta'in. How long does it take to grow? Amale ad shivin shnin, 70 years. Amale pshita lecha, the hayit shivin shnin. Is simple to you? You think you're going to live 70 years, that you're planting a tree that's only going to mature 70 years from now? Amalei said to him, Hi Gavra, this guy, the person you're looking at in other words, Alma Bechrova Ashkachte, he found himself in a world that has carob trees in it. That means, just like my fathers planted the tree and it only grew in my lifetime, Shatli Nami Librai, I'm also going to plant this 70-year carob tree. I'm going to plant it for my children and my descendants. Yativ, he sits down, kakach rifta, he folds over his bread. He's eating his bread on the side. Ataleshinta, he falls asleep, gets very tired, he lies down to fall asleep. Naim. Ahadra le mishunita, something happened and the rock around him shifted. Maybe it was some sort of a mini earthquake or a little mini avalanche, but the rocks around him shifted, or was some sort of miracle, but the rock protected him from the line of sight. No one was able to see him. You'll see why that's important in the aftermath of the story. No one was able to see him. And he was able to sleep. He slept for 70 years. Rip Van Winkle, could you get on this Morris mystery? I'd like to sue Rip Van Winkle for copyright infringement. Kikam, or identity theft, one of the two. Kikam, when he got up, Chaziyalahu Gavra, Dehave Kamalit Minayu. He saw a certain person, right? Who Gave Melaket Minayu. He's gathering carobs from the tree that he'd seen the guy planting in before he went to bed. Amale, Atu Deshetaltiye. Are you the person that planted this tree? Amalei, he said to him, no. Barbire Ana, I'm the son of his son, I'm his grandson. Amalei, he said to himself, Shema Mina, obviously, I see from here, Shema Mina Denaim Yishivin Shnin. I must have slept for 70 years. I can't believe it. Just like it says in the Pasuk, you see it's possible for a person to sleep and dream for 70 years, which is why David HaMelech could write, right? Hayinu kecholmim, we were like dreamers. And even though he was referring to a time span of that length.
This is Choni?
Choni. Chazia lechamre dityalde le ramchi. The donkey he was riding on had given birth to baby donkeys, okay? And those donkeys had then produced more offspring. And now there was I don't know what a flock of donkeys is, someone could Google it afterwards. But a gaggle of geese, a school of fish, a choni of donkeys. Azalebete, he comes back to his house after being AWOL for 70 years. Okay? Amar lehu, he says to them, could you imagine, he knocks on the door. Bired de Choni HaMa'agal Mikayim? Is the son of Choni HaMa'agal still alive? Amrule, no. Bired leta. Could you imagine he returns home and his son has passed away while he's been sleeping? Bar bire ita. His son's not alive, but his grandson is. Amale, he says to his grandson, living in his house, Ana Choni HaMa'agal. I'm the guy. I'm Choni, the circle guy. Lo knew they didn't believe him. How could it be? 70 years. Azal Bet Midrash. He went to the Bet Midrash. Two places where Choni wants to be: his own home and the yeshiva, the Bet Midrash, where he would study. Azal Bet Midrash. He went to the Bet Midrash. Shaminu leRabbanan Tikamre. He overheard a casual comment that was said between the rabbis. Nihirin shmatin ki b'shnei Choni HaMa'agal. Wow. You know how clear the sugya is? You know how clear I understand this Gemara? It's as clear as it was back in the day when Choni was alive. We have Choni level clarity on the Gemara, on the sugya. Why? Because back in the day when Choni would come to the Bet Midrash, any question that the rabbis had, he would be able to answer. That's how big of a Torah scholar Choni was. Amar lahu, he said to him, I have good news for you guys. It's still the time of Choni. Ananiu, I am he. I am him. Lo himnu, they did not believe him. Velo avdi le yekara kidim bebayle. And they did not treat him with the proper respect. He did not treat him with his proper respect. Chalash da'ate, he felt so hurt that they were not treating him with the proper respect, like he was a crazy person. Bai rahami, he begged Hashem for mercy. And remember, when this guy prays, what happens? He gets it. Bai rahami, he asked God's mercy to take his soul. What does he have to live for? His family's gone. His family don't believe he's who he is. The rabbis didn't believe him. Chalas, umit, and he passed away. Isn't that wild? Amar Rava says,
Honestly,
I don't know if he expected them to believe that it was him, but I don't know if he was prepared for the depth of emotion he would feel in not having a place, in being displaced, in not having all the people of his world having moved on. Many Holocaust survivors, by the way, report a similar feeling. Everyone that they knew and cared about, and everyone who knew them was dead.
yeah.
So they're walking into a world. It's almost like when you walk into a world like that, you're a baby. Who walks into a world where nobody knows who you are at an advanced age, and you have to literally start again? It's very difficult. Now listen to the Gemara's ending. Amar Rava. Rava says, "O chavruta." I'm going to come back to you. "O chavruta o mituta." I, the someone who I could have as a companion, a friend, o mituta, I'd rather die. Loneliness can be worse in a person's estimation than death. And by the way, every time you see suicide notes, that's what they're writing about. They're about this profound feeling of loneliness, where they were meant to feel with bullying as another, etc., etc., etc. So that's what Choni's feeling. Now we have a couple questions I want to deal with, but first question we have is Ray. Ray, what's your question?
So, I think we went a little quickly, but I was trying to keep up. Why did Choni sleep for 70 years? Why is that a normal thing? Well, I don't understand.
It's not a normal thing at all. But Choni was a tremendous Talmid Chacham. Okay. And there was something that really bothered Choni. He didn't have an understanding in this. Remember, what else do we know about Choni's Torah study? That it's so clear that any question the rabbis could come up with, Choni had an answer.
Okay.
There's one thing that Choni doesn't have an answer to. Could you imagine? This is the thing that's probably bugging him. And remember, anything Choni says, I mean, I feel like this is like amazing movie to make. A movie about Choni. The comedy scenes would be hilarious. You know? Oh, I wish I was in Israel right now. Boom! Right? Anything he prays for comes true. So Choni has this depth of feeling. He really wants to understand how such a thing is possible. And for Choni, God does miraculous things. Yeah, isn't that wild? So God arranges for him to be able to experience the answer to his question on this Hayinu Kicholmi. Okay? His question is, we know that the period of time is a 70-year period.
For a carrot tree to grow? Or from
No,
Beit HaMikdash
for the Beit HaMikdash to returning the captives to Jerusalem.
Okay.
And the Pasuk, David HaMelech, when he says it, about that time, he says, we were like dreamers. He asks, how could you say someone for 70 years is like a dreamer? Who dreams for 70 years? Who sleeps and dreams for that long? It's not possible. The problem bothered him so much.
He took something that someone said, figuratively and he turned it into literally, and then he lost his entire family?
You're asking a good question. Are you asking why he deserved that to happen to him? I want to understand what you're asking exactly. Or are you asking, is it correct that he took it figuratively or literally? Because if the second question is your question, it shifted from figurative to literal just by him, so to speak, contemplating that concept, right? But I think your first question is much more powerful. You know, why is he being punished for trying to understand the pasuk? You know, why is that happening? So there's different ways of understanding this. One of the ways I understand this is in the vein of a very famous Gemara. The Gemara says, Kililat tzaddik, the curse of a tzaddik, al filu al tenai, even if it's on a condition, mitkayem. Where do we learn that from in the Torah?
What does that mean?
Who says a curse in the Torah that they don't mean? It's on a condition. Like it means if this happens, or assuming that this is the case. Yaakov, excellent. Yaakov says about Rachel, whosoever took the idols of my father Lavan, right? They should die. Not realizing that it was Rachel. Rashi says on the spot, and that's why one of the reasons why she died. Because a curse of a tzaddik, it's not that they wanted to say this, but it has a reality to it. So in the same way, if you would kill someone accidentally with friendly fire, you can't take it back because you didn't mean it. The words of a tzaddik are so powerful that they become reality. We were just actually talking about this. In Halab, they used to have a thing where when they had issues that were big enough with the local, the rabbis would get together. They had a whole procedure they would do. They would go up to the Sefer Torah and they would curse this anti-Semite and the guy would die. There are numerous stories like this that happened in Halab. Wild stuff. Now, again, it's not the only example of such a thing. It happens for Beracha, happens for Kilala. So a tzaddik that's so careful with his words, that he's so guarded with his words, he's so careful with his tzidkut, with his tzedakah, with his ma'asim. Sorry? Shtika, exactly. Like we spoke about on Shabbat. Person who's careful to never say extra words. The power that's in them is unbelievable. Now, whether or not that is a positive thing, sometimes it becomes very positive, and sometimes, like in the case of Rachel, it becomes negative. But that is the reality of the tzaddik. So when Choni HaMe'agal was on such a level, the feeling that he was experiencing of tsar, I want to understand this, it just resulted in that, whether it was a positive or negative thing. You see what I'm saying?
Terrible.
So again, when someone kills someone by mistake, it's terrible. But again, we don't think of tefillah, of the thoughts of a person in such real terms. But for them, for the tzaddikim, it was, and it is. Okay? Two other things I want to point out about this Gemara before I ask you what I think is an obvious question. Okay? Question number one. What made Choni such a person that was always answered by HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So this is really interesting. Because normally you imagine a guy like this, he had the power of prayer. Why? Because he sat wrapped in his talit praying all day. He was a Baba Sali. Not Chas v'Shalom, not to diminish Baba Sali. But he was like a mikubal, dressed in white. That's how you imagine Choni HaMe'agal. But what do we see about Choni HaMe'agal? Two things. Number one, that he was the wisest, the greatest Torah scholar of them all. Right? So his power in prayer didn't come because he was arbitrarily a powerful prayer, giver. And I always say this, beware the Baba. When someone comes and tells me, this guy, you don't know, he gives blessings, he's this, he's that, I say, tell me, which Sefarim did he write? Show me what he wrote on. Let me see his Torah. If he's not, the guy could be a quack. And by the way, his tefillah could be coming from the wrong place, from an impure place.
Could it be Avodah Zarah?
Yes, it can.
Like the people that do the
you don't know. I don't want to get into specific things because each thing is going to be its own thing and it'll detract us. I'm happy to answer you afterwards. But hold on, okay? Is this clear? So we see that he's a tremendous Talmid Chacham, the biggest Talmid Chacham. That they would come to him with any questions, and he would answer their questions. The second thing that we notice is if you looked at the last sentence that the Sanhedrin said about him, what did they see? What?
Everything was clear. All the answers.
Excellent. No, wait. The answers were clear, but what else was clear and clean? It says, "V'nimlat bebor kapecha." How do you save the people with your prayers? Bebor kapecha, with the purity of your hands. Where do we find that language? Mi ya'aleh b'har Hamonai, mi yakum b'kom kodsho. Who's going to stand up on the mountain of God in His holy place? Neki kapayim ubar levav. Bar means clean. Someone who has clean hands and a clean heart. What a powerful language that is. Can we ask ourselves that question? Do I have clean hands and a clean heart? Okay? So that was the power of Choni, because that's what the Psuki, that's what the Sanhedrin said about him. Yes? Can't hear you, you're on mute.
No, it's hard to hear you, so I think everybody has to mute themselves.
Okay, you got...
It sounded muffled, like the phone felt.
Oh. Yeah, you know what it is?
Much better.
Is that better? You know what the problem is? In order for the phone to stand, I keep forgetting to bring the stand with us. And therefore the microphone is on the bottom. All right.
Can we turn sideways?
Okay, we'll turn sideways will be better? Oh yeah, that's it. That should be fine. If we just turn it sideways, then the microphone should be free. Is that good? Oh, sorry. Okay, let's go. Fine, let's carry on. Is that clear? Yes? Stanley, you had a comment or no?
No, it was just the speaker. I was having a hard time hearing.
Mechila. Okay, I'm so sorry.
So what does clean hands mean?
Clean hands means that you're honest, that you didn't touch anything, it's not yours. You know, you don't have any dishonest money in your hands, money that you owed somebody else. And by the way, clean hands doesn't only mean I didn't steal. Sorry?
Yeah, me too. I thought it was killing.
That's something else.
So, clean hands is a concept under the law. When you get sued and you assert affirmative defenses, one of the affirmative defenses is that the plaintiff didn't have clean hands, meaning he did something wrong and he doesn't deserve the relief that he is asking for.
You know something? I think you totally should become a lawyer. That was like so amazing. Number one. Number two, I also want to say, especially to that point, Morris, let's say I have a worker, Sechir Yom. I have a worker in my company. They work every day. I owe them money every day. The halakha is for a Sechir Yom, for a day worker. Excellent, Harry. You're not allowed to pay him tomorrow. You can't let the sun set. So there's many cases you had rabbis running out of the thing. There was once a rabbi who ran out in the middle of Minha and Arbit. Anyway, they're like, where are you going? Arbit. He said, Arbit is Reshut. But my cleaning lady, I didn't pay her yet. That's Deoraita.
I assume on Shabbat you can't pay somebody, right?
You can't pay someone on Shabbat, correct. To pay someone on the day, Shmuel, well, everyone needs to learn this, right? Tachayav lemishu kesef al hayom. Not to hold the Chazanim fund. Everything should be released immediately, inshallah. Yes, okay? Let's move, Rabotai. That's also Niki Kapayim. That's also Niki Kapayim. I'm not sure what he's pointing at. Oh, yes.
What?
Yeah, Niki Kapayim also refers to that, because clean hands means not that you stole that money, but you have money. What else is Niki? It's not yours.
Yeah.
What else is Niki Kapayim?
Don't take advantage.
Don't touch somebody you're not supposed to touch.
You didn't give your maaser.
Oh.
That money belongs to Aniyim. It's not yours.
Not yours.
You said you're going to give a donation. You didn't give it. It's not yours. You owe this money. Niki Kapayim. To be clean of hand and clean of heart. Okay? So all that goes into Choni. Now I have one other question which I think is very important, and the lesson is a powerful lesson, so I just wanted to share it with you. I have one question on this narrative. Choni comes to the house. They're like, I'm Choni. They're like, you're not Choni. Choni's like, oh, shucks. And then he goes to yeshiva. He goes to yeshiva. They're like, oh, if only things were as clear. Things are clear as when Choni was here. This is how clear we have the sugya. Amazing. If only we could go back to that times. And Choni's like, I'm here. And they're like, nah. And they don't give him the proper respect. And he feels very bad. And he says, take me away. I have a question. What's my question?
As well, he could prove it in a minute.
Prove it.
Meaning,
Let him go and say, let me show you. These are where I keep my pajamas. This is my house. I know where the salt is. I know downstairs. Test me. You're in the yeshiva. You answer any questions. So what should he do? Ask me a question. Good, you understand this sugya. But all the other sugyot that you have questions in,
Right.
ask me. Try me. Why did Choni do this? Yeah.
Maybe I missed it before, but what's the point of the story?
The Gemara is telling you the end, because we've been discussing Choni. Now we're learning the end of Choni's life.
Got it.
Okay? So the question is, if Choni was not believed, there are ways for him to establish his identity.
I think he already died when he found out his son died.
Wow. Powerful.
Beautiful.
Number one, Ray is saying, the minute he found that his son died, Choni died. Powerful.
Yeah.
Although, he still goes to the Beit Midrash, seeming like maybe his family life had died, but there was still another part of him that was animating him, because he doesn't pray to get taken at that point. In other words, there's something else he needs to go through before he says, God, take me.
Maybe
The yeshiva, where his contemporaries were in learning.
maybe he was expecting the kavod. Like, it's tough for somebody to come back and, you're Michael Jordan, and then they're like, we don't know who you are, like, these guys are better than you. It's just a very tough reality to adjust to, and he was never used to, like, having to...
And I took that personally. Right? Yes, I hear you. My question is, get that kavod. They didn't give him the kavod because they didn't know who he was. Show them who you are. Go ahead, hit me. Kitone pasim. I got all the answers.
I had it already.
Sorry? What?
No, it's related.
You thought you had what?
The first answer. It wasn't. Thought I gave
You thought you gave me the moment. But it was a beautiful answer.
Beautiful answer.
What? You guys got me? Why didn't he prove it? So I want to share with you a beautiful, beautiful chidush. Okay? The chidush is as follows. There's a very famous Gemara. Gemara talks about a certain case where a rabbi came to his student, and the student asked him a very difficult question. So he tells the student, he says, fold my handkerchief, and I'll give you the answer. Like, do my laundry. I'll give you the answer. Gemara asks, what in the world is he doing? What is he telling him that for? What's the quid pro quo of doing my laundry for him to get the answer? Not only that, asks the Gemara, the student was a Kohen, and he's making him do labor. Like, you're not allowed to ask a Kohen to do that for you. So how did he do it? And I believe it's the Pnei Yehoshua who answers this question, and he says something unbelievable. He says as follows. He says the question that he was being asked was a very difficult question. And in order to have the answer, and to understand and appreciate the answer of the rabbi, he needed to not question it, attack it. He needed to kind of let it sink in. Understand that even though he had questions on it, there were answers to those questions. And that if he saw it through, he'd be able to understand. So what did he do? He told the student, I could give you the answer. But the only way I can give you the answer is if you embody the nature of a student that's going to serve his rabbi. That's why it's mutar for him to do it as a Kohen, because the purpose was only to become a student, and therefore for the sake of Torah to be able to study more. Since they did not respect Choni, when they came to him with their deepest and darkest questions, whatever Choni would answer wouldn't matter. Because they'd say, nah, that's not a good answer. Because what about this? What about that? I don't accept that answer. They used to get the answers from Choni because they understood when they came to him, this guy's going to answer my questions. And if I don't understand it, the problem is not with the answer, the problem's with me. Choni could not have answered their questions. Not because he didn't have the answers, but because they wouldn't accept those answers from someone that they didn't have that level of respect. Once Choni saw that they didn't respect him as much as needed, he understood that he lost the ability to be able to prove by giving the answers that he was who he was, that he was Choni. The same answer actually applies as well with Choni's grandchildren, because in Torah he would be able to prove it with his knowledge, but he lost that chance. In his home, his grandson didn't know who he was. So what chance did he have of establishing that he was Choni? One last piece of the puzzle is that the commentators explain that actually it's not that Choni just disappeared, even though he really did just disappear, right?
Yeah.
One day he went out for a walk and he never came home.
Yeah, so they thought he died in the war.
So what happened? What was the war at the time? There were two brothers that were fighting a bitter battle in the aftermath of the Maccabean dynasty. And since Choni was such a powerful Baal Tefillah, so they understood, or they surmised, or they figured that each one was trying to get him to pray for them. One of the ones that didn't get him to pray for them must have killed him because he refused to pray for them.
That was the idea. That was the thought.
That was the thought process. That otherwise, how could he have just disappeared? So the story was so strong that Choni was unable to dislodge. Could you imagine, as an example, just imagine for 1 second, Ham Yaakov Kassim passed away however long. One day Ham Yaakov Kassim walks in, he's like, I'm him. You're like, okay, whatever. You know how we know how he died. We know we buried him. Like that. It's not it wouldn't be able to challenge it. And interestingly enough, based on that, the same experience that he had with the yeshiva was also the experience he had with his children. But the ultimate takeaway over here, I think, has to be o chavruta o mituta. How powerful the gift of companionship is. First of all, to appreciate the friendships, the connections that we have in our lives. We're so busy spending time figuring out why the people in our lives are not adequate, all the mistakes that they make. And we forget oftentimes how valuable it is to have a friend. When was the last time you called up a friend and just said to them, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate your friendship. What does the guy tell you? What do you need? Why does the guy tell you that? Because you never made that phone call. But look how powerful. O chavruta o mituta. A person doesn't have friendships, they don't have relationships, they're not alive, they're dead. They're dead inside, okay? So, and I think that goes back to your first answer. When he didn't have his son, there was a part of him that really, that went at that moment. Okay, let's carry on. Now, here's a crazy bit. The crazy bit is that actually, it stays in the family. Abba Chilkiah, bar birei de Choni HaMa'agal hava. Abba Chilkiah was the grandson of Choni HaMa'agal. Now, I don't know, I'm always unsure of this. Is Abba Chilkiah, when it says he's the bar birei, the grandson of Choni HaMa'agal, is he that grandson? Is he that grandson? You got it?
The guy that he walked in said.
The guy that he walked in, he said his son's not here, but his grandson's here.
Okay.
So then it just carries on. It's like Abba Chilkiah, bar birei. Was it that one? Was it this one, the one that was in the house?
No.
I don't know. It doesn't say.
He would have been able to know.
It doesn't.
He would have been able.
I don't know.
Does Rashi talk about
Let's see. I don't think so. No. When I looked in Rashi before, and Rashi says, 1 second here. No. Okay. Abba Chilkiah, bar birei de Choni HaMa'agal hava. He was the grandson of Choni HaMa'agal, and of course, following in his tremendous grandfather's footsteps. When the people needed rain, the rabbis would send an emissary to him, and he would beg for mercy from God, and it would rain. Zimna chada, one time, itzrich alma lemitra, they needed rain. Shadu Rabbanan, Zugad Rabbanan, they sent two rabbis to Legabe, to Abba Chilkiah, lemibai rachamen, or they should ask for mercy. The neti mitra, that the rain should come. Azul bete, they went to his house, v'lashkichu, they did not find him at home. Azul b'dabra, they went to the uninhabited areas, v'ashkichu, and they found him over there, the havira karafik, he was working the fields out in the deserted area by himself. Yavu leShalma, they said to him, we turned the page to Chav Gimel Amud Bet, they turned to him and they said, Ahalan, Sahalan, Shalom Aleichem, they're great rabbis, V'lo asavar lehu apeh, and he did not turn to them his face. That word, asaver, we find, is heavy mekabel kol adam. You should always greet every person b'sever panim yafot, with a smile on your face. So v'lo asavar lahem, and he did not turn to them and give them a proper greeting. So according to what they should have deserved. According to Rashi says he didn't even turn his face. The rabbis are like, hello, Abba Chilkiah, nothing. We came to you to pray for the rain, zero. Bipanya, later on in the afternoon, in the evening, ki have minkat tzivi, dara tzivi umara b'chad katpa. When he was ready to go home, he took the wood that he chopped, okay, umara, and the axe, the implement, and he put them b'chad katpa on one of its shoulders. So he didn't put one on each shoulder. He put the shovel, the hoe, whatever it is, on one shoulder, and the tzivi on the same shoulder, wood on the same shoulder. The glima, and he put his jacket b'chad katpa on the other shoulder. Kula urcha, the whole way, lo sayim misani, he did not put on his shoes. Kimati lemaya, when he got to the river, sayim misani, that's when he put his shoes on. Most of us would do the opposite. Kimati lehizmi, when he got to the thorns, vihigi, and the brambles, okay, all things that would scratch his flesh. Dalinu lemanya, he lifted up the hem of his robe, and that allowed for these thorns and thistles to cut him. Kimata lemata, when he got to the city, nafka dvitayu la'apeh kimikashta. His wife came out to greet him, all made up with kishutim, with jewelry. Kimata lebete, when he got to his house, alt dvitayu, he went into his house, and his wife walked in front of him, Beresha, v'hadar ayil ihu, and afterwards, he walked in after them. V'hadar ayil rabbanan. So this guy, the rabbis, he's ignoring them the whole way. He's doing all these strange things. The rabbis follow him into the house. Yativi sits down, v'karich rifta, and he folds his bread. Interesting. Same language that we find by his grandfather. V'lo amalhu rabbanan, and he did not say to the rabbis, Tu kruchu, come, join me, have some food with me. Pal rifta liinuki, likshisha, chada ulezuter trei. He ripped the bread for his children. Likshisha, to the older one, right? He gave one. And to the zutra, to the younger one, he gave two portions. Amala ledvitayu, he said to his wife, Yadana d'Rabanan, I know that the rabbis have come to us, Mishum Mitra, because of the rain, the situation with the rain and how problematic it is. Nesik le'agra, let us go to the roof, V'nibai rachameh, and we will ask for mercy from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Efshar demirtzi HaKadosh Baruch Hu, maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu will find favor, our favor in His eyes. Yeti mitra, and he will, what's it called? He will bring rain. What was the reason why he did it this way? Okay, velo nachzik tivuta lenafshin. And then, if we go up quietly without letting the rabbis tell us why they came, he says to his wife, "Let's just go up to the roof and do this." Then they won't be, oh wow, Abba Chilkiah is, to his wife. They did this, they that, they prayed. So we'll just go. And it will rain, and then we'll tell them to kish because it's raining. Okay? What did they do? Saku li'igra. They went up to the roof. Kam iu b'chad zavita. He stood up in one corner. V'ihi, and she b'chad zavita in one corner. Kadim saluk anane mehach zavite didbitayu. The clouds began to come. From which side? From the side where his wife was. Kinachit, right, when he came down, Amar lahu, he said to the rabbis, as if he has no idea, Amay atu Rabbanan, why are you here? Amale, they said to him, Shadri lan Rabbanan, the rabbis sent us, Legabe demar, to you, to our master, Lemibai rachamei amitra, in order to ask for forgiveness for rain. Amar lahu, he said, Baruch HaMakom, thank the Lord. Shelo hitzrich etchem le'Abba Chilkiah, that you do not need Abba Chilkiah, you don't need us to come. Right? Amru le, they said to him, Yadina Demitra Mahmad Maru. We know that this is because of you. It's not raining for ages. We come to you, you leave the room, it starts raining, and then you want to tell us it has nothing to do with you. We've cottoned on to your plan here. Ela lema lanmar. We already know that, but if you could indulge us, lema lanmar hanimili ditmihalan. These things that were so wondrous to us that we can't believe. My ta'ama ki yahivna lemar shalma. When we said hello to you, lo asavar lan mar ape. You did not turn your face to us. You did not show us the proper, shalom, how are you, welcome. Amar lahu, he said, Sichir yom avai, I am a day worker. Ve'amina, and I said to myself, lo ifgar, how am I allowed to take the time away from my work to entertain your requests? If I turn away from my work, even enough just to say, how you doing, what's going on, come back later, that's stealing. Who did he learn this from? His clean-handed grandfather. Okay? So to even say, take a phone call at work, geneva. Umay ta'ama dara mar tzivi achad katpa v'glima achad katpe. How come you put the wood and the hoe on one shoulder and the jacket, the beged on the other? Surely it would have been more comfortable to put the wood and the hoe on top of the cushion of the clothing on your shoulder. Amar laheu, he said to them, talit she'ula, he was a poor man. That clothing, it was borrowed. Haita. Lahachi sha'aleh, ulahachi lo sha'aleh. When I borrowed the cloak from the person, I asked him for a jacket. I never told him I was going to use it to put wood on it. So therefore it would be geneva. I would be using it inappropriately without permission. So I put it on the separate shoulder. My ta'ama, kula urche, the whole way, lo sayamar mesane. How come the whole way you didn't put on your shoes? V'chimati lemaya, when you got to the water specifically, sayim mesane, you put shoes on. Amalehu, he said, kula urcha, the whole way, chazina, I could see. He was very poor, and he needed to protect his shoes, because he didn't have the money to buy new shoes. So when I could see and I could protect myself, I know where I'm stepping, where I'm not stepping, I don't need my shoes. But when I got to the water, lo kachazina, I can't see if there's a snake, if there's something underneath the water that's going to injure me. There I have to put the shoes on. So that's why I did it there. My ta'amaki matamar lehizmi v'higi, when you got to this bramble patch, dalinu leman, you lifted up your cloak. Amalu, he said to them, ze ma'ala arucha, ze enna ma'ala arucha. He says, my leg, my foot, my skin, if it gets scratched, it's going to get better. If my cloak rips on the thorns, it's not going to get better, and I can't afford another one. That's why I lifted my head, the hem of my robe. When you got to the city, nafka devitayu demar, your wife came out to greet you. Ki mekashta, all adorned. Amalahu, he said, lo eten isheni bisha acheret. My wife comes out with makeup, with jewelry adorned beautifully for me, so I should never ever look at any other woman. What a magnificent lesson this is, that we should never tell our wives to do, because they'll always hate us for it. But still, it's a great thing for them to do, to recognize that instead of greeting your husband in sweatpants and every other person in the world in high heels and makeup and jewelry, maybe it should be the other way around. No one else needs to appreciate your beauty other than your husband, so we have it a little bit backwards. Okay? My ta'ama, how come your wife walked in first? If you're such a tzaddik, surely she should have given you the kabod to walk first. Then you walked after her. And afterwards we went up. Anan, Amaluhu, he said, Mishum de lo bedkituli. I didn't know who you were, so I don't want you walking behind my wife. I'm not leaving my wife behind me with two men that I never saw in my life. So first I ensured that she was safe in the house, and then I followed her, and only then were you able to follow me. My ta'ama ki karich marifta lo amarlan aitu kruchu. How come you didn't tell us to join you when you had your meal? He said, Milshum de lo nefisha rifta. I didn't have enough bread. I only have enough for my family. That's why. Va'amina, and I thought, lo achzik b'hu b'rabanan tivuta b'chinam. Mechila. So I did not want you to be beholden to me for an invite that I could never have honored. So if I would have told you faddal, and you would have said no, you saw I only had one piece of bread to divide amongst my whole family, okay? So what would you have said if I said faddal? You would have said, no, we ate before, right? You would see that then you're gonna owe me for the invite, and you got nothing from it. So I didn't want you to have to owe me for the invite. Lo achzik b'hu b'rabanan p'tivuta b'chinam. Mai ta'ama yehiv ma'li enuka kshisha achada rifta v'zutra trei. How come you gave the older child one piece of bread, and to the younger child two, which would be the opposite, he needs more? Amalahu, they said, hai kai bebeta, the older one is at home. V'hayati b'bnei knishta, and this one is sitting and studying. So therefore, since the older one is able to be home, he could eat when he's at home from the cabinet. Now, the younger one hasn't been home, he's more hungry, so I had to give him two. The Gemara then continues, and they asked him, it's unbelievable, right? The analysis that they're doing on every move that he's made, okay? How come the clouds came from the side of your wife, right?
They even know that because they went up to the roof in secret.
It sounds like they walked outside to see where he went, because they were wise to his trick. I think also, I imagine that when he left, they also went outside, because he's a grandson of Choni HaMa'agal. How did Choni HaMa'agal pray? He would draw the circle around himself outside. They probably wanted to see that for themselves. So they went outside. He wasn't there, but they saw they were praying on the roof, and that it came from the other sides. So they asked, so how come the clouds came first from her side, earlier than the ones that came from your side? He answers, Mishum te'itita shchicha bebeta. A wife, she is more often in the house. V'yahava rifta la'aniyeh, and she can give bread to the poor people. Umekarva haniyata, and the enjoyment and the salvation that the poor man can feel from that food is immediate. Ve'anaya hivna zuza, but me, whatever pennies I have extra to give, I give the ani v'lo mekarva haniyata, because he needs to then go buy the food. So her tzedakah is greater than my tzedakah. Ironically, I mentioned this today specifically in the class, but not from this story, from the story of Mar Ukva. Inami, another answer, Hanhu Biryoni, another answer to this. Hanu Biryoni, those Biryoni usually means like the warriors, the strong, empty-headed, people that want to fight. Hanu Biryoni Dahav B'Shivvan, these people in our town, Ana Ba'i Rachame Dilmetu, I prayed that they should die. He Ba'i Rachame, she prayed for these wicked people, Tilahadri B'Tiyufta, that they should have teshuvah. So, and in the end, ve'ahadru, and they did teshuvah. So, because I prayed that they should die, and she prayed they should do teshuvah, and God answered her prayer, and they did teshuvah, so she has a much bigger zechut than me, and therefore the clouds came from her side. We'll continue Be'ezrat Hashem with the next story next week. On Wednesday. Wait, Wednesday is
Kippur, it's the end of Kippur. Maybe Thursday.
Tuesday is Kippur.
Tuesday night, Wednesday.
So Wednesday is Kippur. So we're not going to do it on Kippur, obviously. So maybe either we'll do a makeup on Thursday, or maybe we'll cut it to Sunday. Let's see. The one thing I just wanted to say is 2 points. Number one, you see the life of a tzaddik, how considered it is, how conscious the decisions are. Number one, right?
By the way,
and number two,
that every move he made actually had
purpose, intention. Yes.
on his own conscience.
Yes, and not only that, also it means that when you're spending time with a righteous person, with a tzaddik, with a rabbi, you're really supposed to have your eyes peeled to watch like a hawk what they're doing, not for the sake of getting a gotcha moment, which some people do, but for the opposite, for the sake of learning. Why did the rabbi do this? Why did the rabbi do that? Sometimes it's nothing, and you don't know until you ask. I remember once I saw a big Rosh Yeshiva. I noticed during the 9 days he was wearing, beginning of the 9 days, he was wearing slippers. So I said, Rabbi, could I ask the rabbi, why is the rabbi wearing slippers now? He says, why do you think? I said, maybe the rabbi is strict on the laws of mourning, not just he wears slippers on Tisha B'Av, but he wears slippers the whole 9 days. He smiled, he goes, no, my feet hurt. So I was correct in observation, but not in intention. All right. So, but there's so much to learn from Talmidei Chachamim, from righteous people, that when we watch, we learn a tremendous amount. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.